everyone, this is Alyssa with the BlueLink team, and in this video I'm going to show you how to remove photo backgrounds using the magnetic lasso and paintbrush tools in Photoshop CS6. Our first step is to use the magnetic lasso to select a specific area of the photo, so that can be found in the left-hand menu of the window. And before you start adding points to the selection, you should always make sure that the feather is set correctly. For BlueLink team members, this requires a setting of 3 to 5 pixels as a standard. This feathering is what determines the gradient between any edits you make in the selection and the non-selected region. So a larger feather number is going to give you less definition between your selected and non-selected areas. Again, this has to be set before you start making your selection, or you'll have to redo the entire thing. To start making your selection, click once on the edge of your structure and you'll see your first point appear. As you go around the image, the tool will automatically place points for you where it senses a big enough change in color. You can also place your own points by clicking once for more precision. You do want to be careful when you do this though, because if you double click, the selection will close itself automatically. If you make a mistake and plot a point somewhere you don't mean to, you can easily delete a point by hitting the delete button on your keyboard until you get back to where you want to continue working from. As you can see, in this photo I'm selecting the heart itself because the background I want to remove completely surrounds it. In most photos, you'll be removing a section of the background that doesn't surround the structure entirely, and in those cases, you would want to select the background directly rather than use the method I'm about to show you. When you get to the end of where you want to select, hover over your initial point, and you'll see a small circle appear next to your cursor. Click once on the first dot and your selection loop will close. Now that I have the entire heart selected, I'm going to right click and choose select inverse from the menu. So this is going to flip my selection so that instead of having the heart in my selection, it's going to be the entire background. And that's what we want to fill. The last thing that I'm going to do before filling the background is zoom in using Command plus on the Mac keyboard. You can see these small areas of background that aren't included in the selection because they're separated by these arteries. To add these areas to the selection, press the Shift button on the keyboard. You can see a small plus sign appear next to the cursor. And once you click the first point of your new addition, you can release the Shift button and continue to select the area and close the loop as you normally would. So I'm going to do this again for the small area that was missed. And then one more time down here in this area. Alright, so here you can see if you forget to press the Shift button before trying to add to your selection, the old selection is removed and a new one starts. To undo this, you can just close the loop. From here, just hold Command and Option on the Mac keyboard and press Z to undo the actions until your original selection appears. In addition to adding to the selection, you can subtract by holding Option for the first point. You can see the minus sign that's now by the cursor. These two functions can be very useful for more complicated selections or if you accidentally close your selection loop too soon by double-clicking. After we have all the appropriate areas selected, to actually fill the background, right-click and select the Fill option. Before hitting OK, make sure you have the use set to black and the opacity set to 100%. Right, and then we just hit OK. The next step is going to be going in with the paintbrush tool to remove any of this haloing effect that can happen when the lasso isn't super tight to the structure. So this tool can be found again in the left side menu. Before you get started, you'll want to reset the colors on the side here to make sure that the black is the correct shade. You can do this just by hitting this button right here. And then when you go to start using the paintbrush, you'll want to make sure the opacity is set to 100 at the top here, and the size and hardness are correct. To change the size and hardness, right-click anywhere on your image to pull up the menu. On the BlueLink team, we like to start with a brush size of 12 to 15 pixels and a hardness of 0. These settings match the 3-point feather that we use with the lasso. From there, all you have to do is brush along the edges like this. It can take some time, but it's very important for getting a higher quality image at the end of the process. I skipped over this small corner because there's a slight difference in how we edit them. So I like to make the brush a bit smaller. I'd say no less than 3 pixels if you can help it. And then you can go in and just nicely clean up the tight corners. And something to be aware of is that because we can't lower the hardness any more than 0, the harshness of this corner is going to be a little more than with the typical outlining. And for this, it's okay because once we zoom out, the area is going to be small and you won't be able to tell. But for those that are larger in the image, it's going to be best to go back through with a magnetic lasso at a lower feather to get that closer edge. There are 2 more things I want to talk about before we end this video. The first is that sometimes to make a more refined edge, it's okay to remove a small piece of the structure you're outlining. For instance, up here the edge is looking a little messy, so I'm going to go in with my paintbrush and just go over the area. You can increase the brush size and hardness a little after you get this initial separation made, just to make it a little easier and make sure you get everything, but I'm just going to keep using the smaller size for this tutorial. The last thing I want to point out is how to match the edge of the harshness with the focus of the image by manipulating the size and hardness of your brush. For this example, I'm going to right click and I'm going to take my size up and increase the hardness only a little bit. So when we go along the edge with this new size brush, you can see how the edges fade just a little bit and they now fit a little better with the focus of the structure itself. So in this case, there wasn't a huge change, but you can see how up here the border is slightly more sharp, while on this side it's a little more soft. Making these types of changes can be a fair amount of trial and error in the beginning, but it becomes easier the more you do it, and it really helps to make the backgrounds look a bit more realistic. That wraps up this step in the BlueLink editing process. Thanks for watching, and feel free to check out our channel for more tutorials and anatomy-based content.